Summer was wonderful, but I have to admit I am ready for autumn. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you are watching this video, you are likely to be a reader. And if you're a reader, you are likely to be excited about autumn. Bring on the jumpers, blankets, longer evenings, hot cups of tea, candles, basically anything that goes well with reading. In fact, I have been so excited that I have been compiling various autumn reading lists, including today's list, which is all about classics. But I'm also going to do autumn TBR just because for some reason with the autumn reading, I want to be a little bit more deliberate about the books that I'm reading. But that will come later. Today we're talking about classics. Let's jump right in. First up, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I don't think we can have an autumn classics list without one of the Bronte's novels, and this one seems to be the perfect candidate. This book holds a very special place in my heart because I credit it with single-handedly reviving my love of classics. I read it last year and I swear this book did something to me, something that it is hard to explain, but this little baby for some reason made me crave reading classics, and I have been reading lots of them. So back to Wuthering Heights. This is definitely not a novel you will feel lukewarm about, okay? Because at least for me personally, the reading experience here was full of these big emotions, fascination, despair, shock. And actually recently I read a book in which one of the characters is talking about this book, and she described this experience perfectly because she said this book grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go. To me, that sums it up. And what you need to do with this novel is try and forget everything you think you know about it from various portrayals in the popular culture, so in its TV adaptations, movie adaptations, because all of them, well, maybe with one exception, reduce this book to, I don't want to say entertainment, but basically very black and white story with black and white characters. And also this book is often interpreted as a romance. It's not a romance. This is a very serious commentary on the circle of abuse, on the concept of what it means to be an outsider. And also, if you look really, really closely, there isn't one clear villain in this book because every single character in this book is a little bit villain, and I mean every single one of them. The fact that Emily Bronte cooked up this raw and stormy tale when she was just 27 years old just blows my mind. And don't get me wrong, this is a little bit hard to get into. The language here is quite archaic. You've got various characters sharing the same name, so you can get a bit lost. But if you were eyeing up this book, I can't think of a better time to read it than in autumn. Just because there isn't a better setting than Yorkshire moors for autumn reading, with, you know, its grey skies and howling winds and beautiful hills, but also the story in here is quite dark. There is a bit of a ghost story in there as well, so I highly recommend, if you haven't read it yet, this is the time to do it. Next author which we absolutely must have in any autumn classics reading list is of course Agatha Christie, and I picked up this book for this occasion, which is called Autumn Chills. Now, the danger with any collections of stories is that you are very likely to already have read some of them. So for this reason, I would highly recommend this book for any beginners people who haven't had the pleasure of experiencing Agatha Christie yet, mainly because through a collection like this, you get to be introduced to her main characters. For example, Poirot, I think, is in 4 of these stories. Miss Marple is in 2 of these stories. And you get to experience the flavor of Agatha Christie's writing and the way she makes us readers put her puzzles together. And so then once you've decided if you like Poirot more or Miss Marple, you can pick up more relevant novels. I also highly recommend this for teenagers. Both of my teenage kids absolutely love mysteries and they love Agatha Christie. I think my 14-year-old son has read all of her books by now. This is his copy, by the way. He doesn't know I borrowed it from his shelf, but I'm safe because he doesn't watch my videos. My favorite story in this collection, by the way, is Witness for the Prosecution, which this year I actually reread because I went to see its theatre production in London and I love it so much. Agatha Christie's writing is highly addictive, isn't it? And I do think her stories are the perfect stories to get lost in on a crisp autumnal evening. Next we have Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I need to say that I am not a big fan of straight horror stories, and this is a vampire story. However, this is a bit of a different vampire story in that there isn't really that much action. Instead, you have this atmosphere that lingers and it's very eerie and tense and also erotic, which I think makes it perfect book for autumn. We have a supernatural figure, we have an old castle, we have a strange ominous atmosphere. I mean, come on, this just screams autumn reading to me. And you know, you can read into this novel as much as you want because the other character, not the vampire, but the other character, Laura, you could argue potentially offers us commentary on desire in Victorian era because she feels both repulsed but also attracted to this vampire. So you've got this juxtaposition of, you know, societal norms of what's acceptable and also our real feelings as human beings and how they are during the Victorian time were repressed. Another interesting thing about this little novella is that the main character, Carmilla, who is the vampire, she is involved with her victims not just physically but also emotionally. But overall, first and foremost, this is fun and easy to read, and because of it, actually, it is a great way to get into classics. Now, I know that most people recommend Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca for autumn reading. However, I want to convince you that My Cousin Rachel is a perfect autumn read too. Not just because of its atmosphere, which is dark and very mysterious and extremely tense throughout the whole novel, from page 1 to the very last page, but also because of its setting, because we are in Cornwall again with its grey skies and ruggy coastline and perpetually damp, windy weather, all of which, by the way, Daphne du Maurier describes beautifully, and she has this skill to utilize these descriptions of nature to really intensify the atmosphere in this book. I have talked about this book on my channel a couple of times now, so I won't go into the details in terms of the plot, but if you're interested, please check out my July reading wrap-up video, or you could just go into it blind, which actually in this case, I would say the less you know about this book, the better. Just trust me when I say you will not regret reading this. So for the next novel, we have Thomas Hardy. This one is titled The Mayor of Casterbridge, and the reason why I've chosen this novel is because one of my subscribers, who is also a wonderful booktuber, I will link his channel below, it's called The Accidental Bookseller, he told me that for him Thomas Hardy is absolutely autumn reading. And also he read all of his novels, I think, because he was pointing me in the right direction of where to start, and he suggested either Far From Madding Crowd or this one, The Mayor of Casterbridge. Now the reason why I've picked this one and not Far From Madding Crowd is because I've seen the movie based on the latter, and I always prefer to know as little as possible about the plot of the novel. I know nothing about this one. However, I did look up very quickly, just for you, what this is about, and I can tell you without any spoilers is that the main character, Michael, gets drunk and he sells his wife and his child or children at a fair. It sounds weird, I know, but we are in the 19th century England. Anyway, some years later, he becomes this very successful businessman, and then he becomes the mayor of this city. But of course, later on things happen. So that's all I'm telling you, because that's all I want to know. I'm very, very excited. This is my first Hardy. I have in my little library his other, maybe lesser known book, which is called Blue Eyes, I think, which I will definitely read at some point, but I'm starting with The Mayor of Casterbridge. And of course, I can totally agree with The Accidental Bookseller that Hardy does sound like autumn author, because he is a master at capturing rural England and its bleak atmosphere, and his books also tend to touch on some darker themes. This next book I am super excited about, because this is Stoner by John Williams. This has been on my TBR since January, but I deliberately was waiting to read this until autumn, and that's because I know this book has very reflective and very melancholic tone. It follows this ordinary life of William Stoner from his childhood to his death, and it's supposed to be a beautiful portrayal of the ordinary. And actually this year I have discovered another contemporary author, Irish author, called Ronan Hession, who writes in a similar vein, exploring these quiet, ordinary lives and is giving them a bit of a gentle spotlight. When that sort of reflective writing is done well, it can be really captivating and it can really resonate with readers as well. So I absolutely loved it. This is why I'm looking forward to this one. Interesting fact about this book is that this book actually wasn't popular at all when it was first published in 1965. In fact, just after 1 year they stopped printing it because it just wasn't selling. However, years and years later, I think in the early 2000s, especially because of the wonderful French translation, this book became extremely popular in Europe, and the book has been named Lazarus literature because it rose from the grave and suddenly achieved commercial success. Let me know if you have read it. Book number 7 is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is the author I have been waiting to discover. This particular book was published in 1868 and it is considered to be very first full-length detective novel. There were some short stories before, but not a full novel where suspense was kept throughout the whole book. The story revolves around the theft of a rare diamond from an English country house estate. It is told from multiple perspectives and it is often placed alongside other great detective novels, for example Sherlock Holmes novels. So I am very much intrigued, and also because this is set in Yorkshire. It's not set in autumn, but it's set in Yorkshire, North England. It is a spooky mystery with highly suspenseful and layered plot. This feels like a perfect autumn read to me. And the final book I would like to recommend to you and to myself to read this autumn, because I haven't read this one yet, is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Again, like with Wuthering Heights, I think there's a danger to be misled about the content of this novel with various popular culture portrayals of this story. This is apparently not at all about a scary monster, but more about the scary side of human nature and how fear can lead us human beings to violence. I don't know if you've heard the story how this book came about, but when I first heard it, I was absolutely fascinated because Mary Shelley was just 18 when she wrote this, and she was at the time holidaying in Switzerland with a few other people, with her future husband. Also Lord Byron was within that company. But because this was the year 1816, which was known as the year without the summer, and that was due to the fact that that was the year when there was a volcano eruption in Indonesia, which severely affected the weather in Europe. And so you had this persistent rain throughout the whole summer. So this particular group of these holiday makers, they were very, very bored, and Lord Byron suggested that they should have a ghost story competition. And this is when Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein. Apparently, the idea came to her because of a nightmare she had, and then later on her husband encouraged her to turn this into the novel, which is what I'm holding in my hands today. I am super excited to read this. I know probably lots of you have read this already. Let me know if you loved it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, where is Jane Eyre? I have not read Jane Eyre yet, and she is definitely on my TBR, but she is on my winter TBR because I understand the whole action starts in November, but the first few chapters are set in this very snowy winter. So I'm saving it up. I'm saving it up for long winter evenings. So these are my 8 reads. All that's left to do is to grab ourselves a blanket, hot cup of tea, light a candle, and get lost in these beautiful autumn classics. If you think you have any other recommendations for me, I would absolutely love to hear them, because you know there's always room for one more cozy read. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. A lot of effort goes into these videos, and I would love to continue making them. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and as always, I will see you next week on Friday. Bye for now.